the biggest issue I would have is roasters demanding the same with no expectation of change. So they're like, well, wait a minute, you were selling it to me at this last year, and now the price is this. I don't want to come down in quality. I want to stay the same, but I'm not willing to continue to pay that premium. No, guys, that's an issue.
Hey friends, it's Lee Safar here with some exciting news. The introduction to regenerative coffee farming workshops are now available on demand in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. These workshops are designed to give you actionable insights into the future of coffee farming through regenerative agriculture. Whether you're a coffee producer, roaster, cafe owner, or just passionate about coffee sustainability. For coffee producers, the workshop is available for just $10, and for everyone else, it's $20. A small price to pay for knowledge that could transform your understanding of what it's going to take to grow coffee from now on. Led by our incredible professors Angela Barrero, Murilo Bettarello, Felipe Croce, Carlos Ordóñez, and João Araújo, the workshop is packed with practical knowledge and strategies to help coffee farmers and the entire coffee industry adapt to the challenges of climate change, rising costs, and market demands. If you're a business owner, this workshop is a great and affordable way to inform your employees about the challenges ahead while also supporting Mapper Forward. This is also a great workshop to share with or gift to your coffee producers. Head to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the description to purchase the on-demand version and start your journey towards a more sustainable coffee future today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is unfortunately the final episode of our 5-part series with Emma Haines from Algrano. What a great discussion that we've been having about this moment in the coffee supply chain and how everything is changing. In this episode, we're talking about what the future looks like for the coffee supply chain. Where I want to start this conversation is at the end of the supply chain, and specifically in the cup. As we mentioned through this series, I've been drinking a lot of old crop coffee. And where I want to start this conversation is at the question, do you think that cup quality is going to experience a shift in acceptance when it comes to affordability as this change and shift happens?
This is such a good question to start with. I think it has to. I think
That's ironic? All of this fucking education that we have been doing and all of this science and blah, 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 blah. And it all caves in now that this is happening.
Yeah, for sure. I find it's not a surprise to me. Again, a bit like you, I've been seeing this coming for a long time. I've been saying this for years as well. Like, people forget that coffee is just coffee. And we perceive additional value from a qualitative perspective. And I say this as a sensory trainer of many years. I've taught green, I've taught sensory. So I've been, really tried to keep up to speed with it. And even in the time that I've been teaching, or, prior to that, the time that I've been in coffee, I've seen a real transition. We see these trends. I mean, I can remember, like, I'm old enough to remember when at the rise of specialty in the UK, so let's say like late 90s, early 2000s, when, naturals were considered to be like mind-blowing. Like, they're so bougie, they're so fancy. And then we cycled rounds and we were like, oh, we don't like naturals anymore. Now we're all about honeys. Or now we're back to wash. And I can remember, cupping coffees that would be perceived as like over fermented, that now today people would be paying an absolute premium for, especially in some markets. So, like, I think this idea of quality is quite fascinating. I think we have been sold something. I think we've bought into this concept. I think people forget that growing coffee is really, really, really fucking hard. And it's getting harder, and it's getting more expensive. Like, we do not have, this same kind of cost associated with producing a high-end specialty, is a real struggle, And, I think people have to understand that fundamentally, when we talk about coffee, the base level question is this coffee safe for consumers to drink? Yes or no? Now, is there a high level of ochratoxin A that I should be worried about in this coffee? Yes or no? And as it happens, the cleaner the coffee, the better the processing, the higher quality the coffee is, the lesser the risk of things like OTA, right? So, you have like a base level that we should be aiming for, which is, do you know what? We want this coffee to be free of ochratoxins. We want it to be safe to consume. But then ultimately, we have many above the fact that we're making sure this coffee is safe to consume, we have like many different options and many different routes. And I see now, like, we have roasters that have trapped themselves in a bit of a corner, right? Because maybe historically they've marketed to their customers, we're a specialty coffee roastery. We only buy coffee that's 84 points or above. And I'm like, well, good luck to you now. Best of luck. Because honestly, you're going to barely find an 80-point coffee for what you were previously paying for your 84s. Yeah. So I think this is a really unique time to address this, I'm going to just say it, this snobbery in coffee, this misinformation in coffee. I don't care. Like, Lee, honestly, I mean it in the nicest possible way, but I don't give two hoots if you're sitting there drinking coffee that's 3 years old. If you enjoy the coffee, if a fair price has been paid for the coffee, if the supply chain is equitable, I'd say enjoy it. Yeah. Like, why do I care? Why does it matter to me what you're drinking? Like, I don't mind. Like, I have way bigger things to be worried about with coffee supply than just the cup score or the perceived cup score. Because even when we talk about quality, that's a whole big issue in itself. You could send the same coffee to 3 or 4 different Q graders globally and get completely different results, right? Like completely different scores. I've never been to a single calibration and everybody's actually been calibrated at the beginning. Yeah. Like, come on. Like, there's big issues. So I think actually this is a really beautiful opportunity for people to not just overhaul the way they buy coffee. And I mean, do they buy it direct? Do they have more contact with origin, etc.? But I think, we have an opportunity to say fundamentally, what coffee do I actually need? What level of quality, what cup profile, forget score, what cup profile is my consumer looking for? Because maybe they're looking for just a really nice, fairly developed roast. It's a coffee that tastes like coffee. That's what they want. So maybe I can get off of my high horse. I can stop being so snooty. I can have a conversation with the producer I'm wishing to buy from, and I can say, okay, what do you have that would fit what I'm looking for? And he's maybe going to be available at like a slightly better price. So I can see this as a way to overhaul buying as a whole. And I don't think we should stop pushing for higher quality coffee. I think this is amazing. It's the catwalk of the fashion world, right? These, we're always going to have these, I want to say like unicorn coffees that, we're always striving for. But we also, the scoring system, in my opinion, was flawed, massively flawed, is massively flawed. We've got this weird transitional time where you've got the new CVA system coming in that's essentially scrapping the score and is referring to coffee as coffee. And then you've got the old system, which the CQI is still using, which is still using a cup score. And so it's no wonder buyers are confused. They are bombarded with different views, different ideas, different, people pushing different agendas, all the time on a daily basis. And they're just trying to keep up. They're just trying to learn this information. And I think like the best thing that a buyer can do right now is to stop and say, do you know what? Just hold fire. What is important to my business? What is important to my consumers? And build it from the base upwards. Because actually we should see this as an opportunity to do something really quite transformative within our businesses and become actually not just have this bullshit word we're going to fly around because it sounds good if people Google it. Like, we can actually become more sustainable in our buying. How can I help a producer export more of their coffee that they previously weren't exporting? Can I pay a premium for a grade of coffee that is a slightly smaller screen size, that maybe has slightly higher secondary defect count, but still tastes really good? It's clean, it's consistent, it's what I'm looking for. And I'm still supporting that farmer. Maybe this is a brilliant time. We have to spin it around and we have to look at like the positive that we can establish in businesses now, I think.
I have a question for you that I have only really thought about for the first time now. Have we pushed specialty coffee too far?
I think there's two answers.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, have we pushed it too far from an experimental perspective, in which case, hell no. I think we're going to be coming out with all sorts of crazy experimental processes. And I enjoy it. I think it's interesting and fun and a value add.
Mm-hmm.
Have we pushed it too far, as in, have we extracted too much? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear more about what you think or how you think we pushed this idea of specialty coffee as an industry. If I understand you correctly, we have pushed the concept of specialty coffee as its own industry too far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say this all day long. And I've been saying it for a long time. You know, like we've marketed specialty coffee as though it's its own whole industry. And coffee is coffee. Like, there isn't and shouldn't be. It's this human-made idea of this. It's not like a step between a 79.75 and an 80. It's this valley.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say to couples, I'm like, guys, like, you potentially, when you're let's not talk about the CVA system because it's different. And I am really here for the new system. And it's controversial, and some people think that that's ludicrous that I'm saying that. But honestly, I've spoken to lots of people, and I think it is very well timed, and I think it is a good step forward. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, let's think historically with the old system. It was fundamentally flawed. You know, you cannot have a system where people globally calibrate. It just doesn't work. You cannot globally calibrate. I'm sorry, but you cannot. Genetically, we're all different. We all have different backgrounds. You know, how can you? I mean, guys, this would be every few months at most if you were working in a sensory science background. I mean, probably weekly. You know, if you were actually working in sensory science. The old form it doesn't work. You show it to a sensory scientist and they're like, well, this is incorrect. We're asking too many things on one form, and that's never how we would assess anything from a sensory perspective. So, like, it's been broken for a long time, right? Like, it was a step forward at the time, but we know better, and now we can do better. And I think, we had a system that was built on washed Arabica, on washed Arabica only. And then you had people scoring naturals, scoring honeys, scoring extended fermentations, scoring infused coffees. Like, guys, whoa, stop. You can't score any of these coffees on this old form.
Right.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work. It wasn't created for that.
My issue with it, go on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just going to say, like, every time somebody assesses, green coffee on the old system or a cupped coffee on the old system, like, really, we should just be talking about a washed Arabica. That's it. That's the extent of it.
Right. My issue with the whole thing is that I think it's tone deaf. Right now, we have such bigger problems than the CVA. And the fact that the SCA is pushing this CVA down everybody's throat reinforces the hypothesis that they are ignoring the coffee crisis. They are ignoring that we as an industry are in crisis. And if their answer to us being in crisis is a CVA.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
the fuck to say to anybody.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. I think, essentially, timing wise, people have got way bigger things to worry about. I think ultimately it will, if it works in the way it's planned to work, I think it would make things easier for people in the long run. But we don't have time for that. We don't
No,
have
we
time
don't
for it
know
to
if the
slowly filter
long
through.
run's here.
Yeah, exactly. We're in a situation where people have to be making decisions now. They don't have time for it. And so I get it. I understand why you're saying it. I understand why people are hesitant to jump in with it because, again, it's more cost, it's more expense to go and learn something new. You're going to be doing something that maybe some of the industry isn't doing. But what I do think is that regardless, CVA or not CVA, whatever route people choose to take, I think this is a really good opportunity to overhaul what it is you're actually looking for. Like I have people on courses that are working in specialty roasteries, and I will ask them, guys, what's the definition of specialty coffee? And I'm talking from a grade perspective. What is a specialty coffee? And they're like, oh, a coffee that scores 84 up. I'm like, well, no, it freaking isn't. And it never has been. This industry just push, 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 push. And, we've pushed hard and we've made it so difficult. And like our expectations are now so high. If I do a calibration cupping with, people that are predominantly buying high quality specialty coffee, honestly, I can give them an 80-point coffee and they're scoring it as like, it's not even on the score sheet. Their views of it is so low. I'm like, guys, you are not living in the real world.
No.
Like, this is not. This is clean. This is consistent. This is free of off notes. There is no mold in this cup. It is not phenolic. This is a really consistent coffee. But because some people have been so spoiled that they're mostly cupping like super high scoring lots, that they forget, they're so detached from it. And like I said early on, when we spoke in the previous episode about it, like I love specialty coffee. I drink specialty coffee. But I'm also really aware of the industry and the state we're in now, the state we've been in for a really long time, and the fact that like we have to start being more open-minded. And I think that what is interesting, I am seeing more roasters come forward and say, Emma, we need to think about what it is we're actually buying. Are there other options? And I welcome this. I never, ever, the last thing I would do is think, well, told you so, or,
Right.
I think this is really important. It doesn't matter when you learn the education. It would have maybe been easier if you learned it a while back, but you're learning it now and that's great.
But we're here.
That's great. Exactly. But I think also that the question that we're not really seeing people talk about or ask is, what does this mean for specialty coffee in the future?
Right.
From a production side. So if I'm a grower previously earning a premium for my specialty coffee, but the cost of producing that specialty coffee is way higher because, Lee, as you know, every time you sort a coffee at the mill, it costs me a lot of money.
Yep.
Every time I do an optical sort, every time I sort by density or size, screen size, I'm losing coffee. I'm losing money. So the cost to produce a super clean, visually super clean green coffee that cups really high is way more expensive than, maybe a slightly lower grade coffee. And now the premium that I'm going to need to get for that, because I can essentially get a much better price for my commercial lots, that, is going to be way, way higher. So why would I bother going to the effort necessarily? Are we going to see less specialty availability overall? I think we'll always have the crazy lots. We'll always have these really interesting, funky fermentations and, the fashionable stuff. I think we'll always see that. But I think we're also going to get a bit of an awakening with availability on the higher scoring stuff. As in when I say higher, I mean like the 84 range, the 83 to the 85. I think that's going to be very insightful and interesting to see what happens with that.
So you think like right now, when I think of specialty, I think of, between an 83 and an 85. That's kind of the range of the middle of the range of the specialty, right? People want to tell you that that's what they're serving. I wonder if that range is going to drop to 81 to 83.
Yeah.
If we're
I
lucky.
personally would say for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I'm already addressing this now with people. And I think this is a great thing. You have to cut your cloth accordingly. So you've got two options. You can either, you're going to have to pay more for your coffee, end of story. There's no two ways about that, right? We know that.
Whatever
but you
it's
can
going.
either, exactly. Overall, your coffee is going to cost more.
Mm-hmm.
But you can either still continue to pay the premium you were paying, but now that premium is adjusted, right? So now your premium, instead of being here, your premium is here, all in.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either continue buying this, great, wonderful, or you can say, okay, well, my price is now here. Maybe it's above where my previous premium was, so I'm already paying more. And maybe to make that, to soften that blow a little bit, I'm actually going to adjust what I'm asking for.
Right.
And I would say, like, the biggest issue I would have is roasters demanding the same with no expectation of change. So they're like, well, wait a minute, you were selling it to me at this last year, and now the price is this. I don't want to come down in quality. I want to stay the same, but I'm not willing to continue to pay that premium. No, guys, that's an issue. That's the problem.
I think that's an issue is not quite correctly stating that scenario. I think delusional, unrealistic, unfair, and completely ignorant is what that is. Because, like, look, I've paid, I had 2 coffees yesterday. I had coffee with somebody yesterday. We had 2 V60s. They weren't anything special. Like, we didn't order the most expensive, and they cost me $20 US a cup.
Wow. A cup.
And it was horrible. And it makes me angry. Not that it was horrible. I was angry because I felt lied to.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was being misled by the cafe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't have a problem paying for a cup of coffee that I'm going to drink and enjoy.
Yeah.
But it angers me to pay $2 even for a coffee that doesn't meet the expectation that was set for it.
Yeah.
If I'm buying a commercial grade coffee that I know is just something that's going to give me a caffeine hit that I need, I know
you have an expectation.
I have an expectation, and my expectation was managed. But when I'm spending $20 per cup on a coffee that is far, far not meeting the expectation, now I'm leaving there saying, if I was the kind of person who wrote Google reviews, which I'm not, but if I was the kind of person who wrote Google reviews, I never want to talk shit about a company, but we got to do better. And I feel like the future of this industry is that the more you're going to try and hide the reality of your situation as a business, the more that customers are going to figure out that you're comfortable with lying to us. And granted, I'm somebody who's informed and I understand what a past crop coffee tastes like. I understand what a shitty roast coffee tastes like. I understand what a badly brewed coffee tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
But when you assume that your average customer doesn't, that is an unrealistic position to be taking in a market.
Yeah.
Especially when you're charging $20 a cup. And I get it. I'm here in Dubai, and because the Dubai market is only open for a certain amount of months every year, they charge a higher price for coffee. $20 is still fucking excessive.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be
And the
expecting something pretty special for that,
well, and
right?
the market is flooded with past crop coffee.
Mm-hmm.
The in my opinion, and from my experience, what people are doing here is they're ignoring the reality of what the market is, and
Yeah,
they're just assuming that people are not going to understand what's happening.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that as we see the future shifting and us moving in another direction, the customer and the business have to go on a journey together to understand where we're going to land. And I don't know where that's going to be, but I don't even know if we're at that place yet as an industry where we can start thinking about where this is going to land. So we'll see.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
If you have one prediction for the rest of this year, what would it be?
Or I think that I would say I don't think we've seen anything yet.
Yeah, I agree. Earlier in this series, when you were like, now that we're kind of like, before when when this was all starting, I'm like, what do you mean when this was starting? I feel like we're still just starting.
Mm. Yeah.
I think the end of this looks very different to what the start of it is. When do you
Okay.
think the end of this happens?
I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I feel like we would have like a definitive end, right? Ultimately, while coffee is sold in the way that it is sold, traded in the way that it is traded, we are going to see cycles. What we're seeing now is everything come to fruition as well.
Mm.
And we've got, incredible volatility, not just in one part of the chain, but everywhere.
Mm.
So I don't know if I feel like we'll see kind of a definitive end. I think what we will see is a transformation. I think we will see an ongoing change. I think, I hope that we will see buyers using this as an opportunity to take some time to sit and reflect and talk it through and decide what direction they want to go in. They have an opportunity now to really think about how they buy. And I think the other thing they need to think about is how have they been communicating to their buyers? So if I am a specialty roastery that has historically claimed that I only buy 84-point coffee and I pay a premium to producers because the supply chain is important, and think I need to continue to do that.
Mm.
Or I need to transition and transform my message to my consumers. And maybe I need to be really open and be like, guys, the market's here. That means we're at a crossroads, and how am I going to communicate that to my buyer? Because otherwise we go back to what you just mentioned. We go back to consumers feeling like they're being lied to.
Yeah, ripped off.
And that's not going to be good for anybody.
No.
That is not going to be good for anyone. So, I think we're up for an interesting year, 18 months, 2 years. But I do also I see some really challenging times, and I see some really heartbreaking times for producers, for roasters, for everybody. But I also see some really interesting times ahead. Like take this as an opportunity. Listen to what you're being told and take stock and decide that, like, if you've ignored it all up till now, or if you've just been panicking and flustered and doing the best you can, fine. But like, draw a line in it and say, okay, from this moment onwards, I'm going to seek advice and I'm going to adjust how I do things.
Yeah.
And if I was one of those people that was previously slating everybody else for buying this grade of coffee or looking at this or doing that, then maybe I'm going to take a good look at myself and I'm going to say, okay, how is it I want to do it? Maybe actually they were right. Maybe I should consider this, and just take this as a moment. If you're going to weather this storm, if you're going to survive this storm, then you need to be asking yourself some questions. And those questions need to be linked into, what does my business stand for? What why did I even build this business? You know, what drove me to this? And am I being true to that still? You know, and I think it could be really useful. You know, it doesn't all have to be really negative. I think we could see some really positive interactions off the back of this. And, you know, hopefully we're going to have a whole generation of business owners that actually know what the bloody hell the sea market means.
Oh, no,
You know, they're actually
it's a
going to
dream.
understand how coffee is traded for the first time ever, you know. We're going to have, you know, buyers of all sizes actually comprehend this stuff. And I think that's amazing. I've spent my life dedicated to try to teach people about this stuff.
Yeah,
And now
wow.
suddenly everybody's gonna be interested in it. So, you know, I find that exciting.
For those who are interested in learning about this stuff from you, how do you, like, where do you do these courses? Do you do them online? Do you do them in person? Are they on demand? Are they live online, live in person? How does it work?
A bit of a mix. I am super busy with Algrano now, so I don't teach as much as I used to, but I do still teach with London School of Coffee, which is amazing. I don't run them as frequently as I used to, but we do still run them. And I try actually to do a lot of the green training where I can, certainly like foundation level. I do that online because I like it, again, to be accessible to everybody in different time zones. So yeah, I do some courses with London School of Coffee still. And honestly, the rest of the time this is conversation with buyers.
Yeah. Well, this is the time for it, right? I
This
love it.
is the constant. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us where people can get in contact with you, where people can get in contact with Algrano, all the websites and blah, 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 blah.
So I am mostly contactable. Instagram's a good place. I'm at Mama Bear Haines. Long story, but there we go. She didn't name me, and now we kept it. I also obviously work for Algrano, so I'm just Emma at algrano.com. And the Algrano website is literally www.algrano.com. One thing I will say is whether people are interested in what Algrano does or not, honestly, I can't stress enough that there's a ton of free resources.
Yeah, great.
Like, you know, I have a great colleague that kind of really, her name's Louisa. I'm giving her a little shout out because she's awesome. She speaks multiple different languages and she spends her life committed to researching stuff.
Wow.
And her blogs are insane. They're so good. They're so on the pulse, you know, all the time.
Nice.
I mean, she tells us things and we're like, yeah. And then lo and behold, it happens. I'm like, wow. She has a crystal ball, I swear. But yeah, so Louisa's really good. Her blogs are great, but we do just try and position ourselves as educators, you know.
Yeah, perfect.
Obviously, that's amazing. That's the dream. But like harvest calendars, you know, understanding how supply chains work, like that's basically what we do. That's what we're there for. Helping people demystify it.
Emma, thank you so much for a wonderful series. Very informative. Folks, I'm really sorry that we went over time on every episode, but not really sorry at the same time. You're welcome is what I really mean. Emma, you're a superstar. I hope you'll come back on the podcast. This has been really fantastic.
No, thank you for having me. And I can safely say I don't think anybody will be surprised that I went over time. Once you get me started, there's no stopping.
I love it. Will you do us the honor of signing us up for this series?
Yeah, of course. Peace, love, really good coffee, whatever coffee that is, and loads of peanut butter, because actually peanut butter is one of my favorite things in the world, next to coffee, of course.
A woman after my own heart. Thank you very much again, Emma. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Take care.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.